Running Sentences presents One Dead Man, Part 2, A Terrible Situation. Trapped on the island, the two friends do their best to avoid the cops, military, and secret police, all who may or may not want to discuss what these two happen to know about the dearest of dear leaders, or whoever this person may be. This story is written and narrated by Michael Hunnery. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, and/or fictional businesses, characters, events, and so on and so forth is purely coincidental. Copyright 2026, Michael Hunnery, all rights reserved. The alleyway remained much the same despite Nate's insistence that they should run away. The ugly yellow shirt lay on the dirty ground in front of him, and it was quiet. "Where would we go?" Charles asked.
"Anywhere but here. This is another setup to ruin us, Charles."
"Ruin us? How would it? We don't have lives that will be ruined."
"They will be once dear leader fans learn we know something. You know those types of psychos who don't stop at anything to get their way,"
Nate said. "I agree they are weird and will likely try and kill us, but this is just a yellow ugly shirt. A yellow ugly polo shirt. It looks similar, but it's different maybe?"
"It looks all too similar for my liking, and probably for their liking as well. Let's walk away, please."
Not waiting for a response from his friend, Nate walked hurriedly to the end of the alleyway. The street beyond was calm with a few people and cars passing on by. They emerged back onto the sidewalk with Nate marching up it before anyone could look or talk to him. Not that anyone was going to do that. From what Charles could see, there was a lot of people with their heads down, hurrying this way and that. There were no cops, though, or secret police around that he could see, and all he could do was catch up with his friend. "Where are we going to go?"
"I don't know. It's getting late out, and while it is summer and should be bright for a while longer, I just want to get lost in the darkness of the island when that comes."
"Well, that will definitely not make us suspicious at all, especially if we get lost in a nearby nationally owned park," Charles countered.
"Better than sticking around here, though."
"Why don't we go back to the beach, then, where we once were?"
"Why? We were just there. It didn't do us any good."
"I mean, we could go exploring where we found that guy." Nate gave him a cursory glance to see what he was trying to do. Didn't make any sense to him, though, judging from his expression of puzzlement.
"And why would we want to do that?"
"Well, I don't know. It's someplace to go that we know and has probably been checked over before. It will at least give us some privacy and maybe we can look into this," Charles offered.
"You want to go looking for that missing figure, don't you?"
Nate said. "It beats standing around here arguing about what we should do." Throwing up his arms in frustration, Nate stopped walking and turned on his friend. They'd made it to the end of the little section of the island town. Now all that was left were a few roads that would eventually connect to the next harbor on the other side of the island and went deeper into a forested section of the island.
"Really? That's what you want to do? Find out if there's a hidden body or something like that in the woods? That's not much of a plan if you ask me."
"Well, I could clear our names, and it would be helpful if we found what we're looking for."
"Those soldiers would probably accuse us of being in on it if they found us searching. Did you think about that?"
"No, but we need to do something, and the beach had a lot of little caves along it. They would be a good place to hide out, in case we should need to do that." Shaking his head at the incredulous suggestion, Nate did his best not to look like he was losing his cool. There were still a few people hanging out around here, and some were now looking their way.
"Fine. Let's go before we attract any more attention. I don't think this will achieve anything, and it's getting late."
I've heard that the beaches are supposed to light up during the night, so it'd be a great sight to see. So we'll be able to see some stuff, maybe.
What are you even talking about?
Sea creatures, whatever they're called, they light up under the water near the shores, giving the place a nice glow. At least that's what was reported to happen when I looked this place up on the internet.
Great, then we will be lit up for everyone to see us when we're walking across the beaches. Oh, don't be so negative.
It doesn't do us any good. With a shake of his head, Nate sets off, with Charles keeping a watchful eye out as they went. The crashing waves and slightly lit up beach, thanks to these creatures in the water, made it peaceful and beautiful to look at. Nate was crunching his way across the somewhat shell-encrusted sands towards the rocky outcrops, where they could see a cave stood. Not far off, there was the sound of a thump, 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 beating its way through the air. A helicopter that they'd seen flash on by before, with a searchlight on, was looking at the water a good distance away from the island. Charles was following, but keeping his distance, since he could see there was some frustration coming off of Nate.
Are we cursed?
How do you mean, Nate?
The stress from our jobs is killing us slowly. We're not big shots by any means, but decent enough employees. So we take a break from work to come here, where we find a body that probably searching for.
It did vanish on us.
Which is another cursed thing if you ask me. Why does this happen to us of all people? We didn't do anything to anyone. You're friendly and outgoing most of the time, and I'm just me.
Charles got up to him at the mouth of a little cave set against some rocks on the beach. This, red as a spotlight from the helicopter, flashed nearby. In a hurry, Charles pushed Nate and himself into the dark, cavernous space. There was a dripping noise, and also a sloshing sound that came from deeper inside. It sounded like there was a lot of water in this cave, which didn't bode well for them. There was some light, though, the same sort of bioluminescence outside. But in here, and it was a bit duller, didn't give that full view of the place.
What was that for?
Nate demanded, turning on Charles. He wanted to avoid being spotted on the beach. The helicopter looked our way.
Oh, great. Just great. Another thing going wrong.
There was a heavy splash as Nate took a step forward to get away from being close to Charles. His foot sank a few feet, and his entire balance was thrown forward, forcing him to throw out his arms in a circle to catch his balance. It didn't work, and he splashed down, only to be pulled up a moment later by Charles. You all right?
No!
Okay, sorry, but shush. We don't want to be found?
I fucking know!
As Charles helped him up, they stood there for a moment as the sound of voices came from outside. They were crystal clear and even echoed about the cave. You saw someone? Copter said they saw 2 people in this area. Not sure if they were pulling my leg or not, but orders are orders. Gotta check this place out. What the fuck are people doing out here? There's nothing here, and no place to crash for the night, at least that I'm aware of. Perhaps they couldn't find a place for the night after that announcement. Anyway, the chopper said they went into this cave. Want to call out to them? Sure. This is Officer Rod near the Department of Investigations. We know you're in there. Please come out. We have some questions for you. Nate and Charles shared a look of disbelief. Neither had heard of this so-called department, and they didn't think it was worth risking themselves to go out there. They leaned in close to one another so that they could whisper and hopefully not be heard. Does that water you fell into go anywhere?
I didn't get much of a chance to look, but maybe we can hide in there if we're not surrendering.
Do you want to do that? Surrender, I mean. Doesn't seem like you want to do that, but yeah, I just have to ask to make sure.
Not really, no, but our options are kind of fucking limited right now, so let's go.
Both put their feet forward and slipped into the water that was surprisingly deep. They were soon both swimming since their feet did not actually touch the ground, but they also found that the luminescence seemed to react to them, brightening up the cavern a little bit more. Is that place getting brighter in there, Roddery?
Looks that way, Margot. The water does have that weird tint to it, so, I don't know. I'm not sure what it does.
Well, let's just go in and grab those two fools, the other one replied. With a glance to one another, upon hearing this, Charles and Nate, who had their heads just above the water, both grabbed a breath of air and dove down into the water. It grew darker and watery the further down they went, and thankfully it didn't go too much further down. It was a carved-out spot, and it led somewhere that they could see just off into the distance. Charles looked around for Nate to see him already pushing forward. For a second he wondered why his friend was so eager, then felt the pulse and pounding need for oxygen that hit his lungs. Sticking around here and trying to go back up was not a good idea. Their heads broke the surface with a splash in this new area, and they would have winced if they were not so busy sucking in air. They would have also noticed the feet in front of their faces of the small opening in the cave, but again, busy with air. After a few moments had passed, they looked around and only had a moment to register what was before them.
What's that?
Feet?
I know that. Why are they here, and whose are they?
No idea, Nate.
You're real helpful, buddy.
Can you answer those questions?
No, I cannot, Charles.
Grinning and trying to hold back a snicker, Charles said,
You're real helpful, buddy.
Shut up. Charles had moved a little ways away from the feet. There wasn't much room to do so, since the opening was small, and then he got out. The dripping water from his clothes made this place echo as he tried to look around. Can't see shit in here, and that bioluminescence seems to have gone away.
What are you even hoping to see?
Whose feet those belong to, and what this cave is? I mean, we have to find a way out of here, don't we?
We could go back.
Nate said this with a bit of hope in his voice, even though he didn't really feel that way. Into the arms of the cops, Charles questioned.
Yeah, no way we're going that way. Get out of the way. I'm coming up.
Doing as he bid, Charles stepped a bit further in, peering about into the darkness. His eyes adjusted a bit, but it wasn't a place that gave away its secrets easily. If you want to wait here, I'll go ahead and see what's around here.
Can you even see?
No, but I'd like to try if that's alright.
Make it quick. I don't want those cops or agents or whoever they were to catch me here all alone.
I'll only be a few minutes at most. Charles stepped away, his feet sliding on the slippery rocks, and he soon vanished into the darkness that surrounded this area. These footsteps were still audible, tapping away, and giving Nate a vague idea of where his friend was headed. Although, in reality, Nate wasn't paying any attention to that, as he was intent on staring back at the little waterway that they'd come through, and hoping that no one was going to follow them in here. A bit further in, things became a bit easier to see for Charles. He walked more carefully, since even here, away from the water, these rocks were still slippery. He spotted a source of light coming from a big opening in the ceiling of this place, and oddly enough, there was a staircase leading down here? It looked disused, and the railing to it was broken, but it was still there. He wondered if this had been some sort of attempt at a mining operation, but with the moonlight now spilling in, there didn't appear to be any such equipment or hole chipped into the cave that would give such signs. It was just all very odd. I found a way out of here, Nate. There was a quick sound of shoes squelching and approaching, which thankfully only took a moment to get to him.
Did you have to shout that?
I said it in my normal tone.
Caves bounce words all around the place. What if those weirdos have people searching for us? They probably heard you and now are waiting for us up there or wherever to snatch us and question whatever else that we are. What's going on?
Nate said, his mouth moving faster than his brain. They could come down here and do that at any point. Look, there's stairs and an entranceway. This place doesn't do much to stop people from coming in.
That we can see?
Yeah. By the way, should we see whose body that is, or should we just leave it here? Nate gave him an incredulous look and shakes his head.
Are you mad? Why would we care about a corpse?
It might be the one that everyone's looking for, you know, that leader or important person. I did see that figure looked like it was missing a shirt as well as its shoes, so the thought crossed my mind.
Well, forget it. This is potentially a way out, and that's all I care about. No going back now.
Nate hurried his way towards the stairs, but paused at them. They were made from rock and cement, though worn and not in a great state. A tentative step was taken, but then was pulled back before really settling down onto that rocky cement. He looked to Charles and sighed, and then moved to his friend, instead of just walking up those stairs themselves. "What's wrong?" Charles asked.
Besides everything lately?
Yeah, Nate, you were eager a second ago, now you don't want to move an inch?
You got me thinking about the body back there, and it messed with my head.
It's a big guy on the fat side,
and I don't know what exactly those other people are looking for, but fat guy sort of fits what we think they're looking for. But it's the same sort of body type.
From what I saw, I think so, yes. You think we've run into this guy everybody's looking for again? This time it's just him isn't playing around? What is going on?
Well, that figure didn't move an inch while we were over there, so either they're really good at acting or they're dead. I don't know which I want it to be either.
Well, we could go back, drag them over here, get a better look at them in this light.
It's an option, though.
I know you don't like that sort of idea.
Yes, I don't like it. Just do this so we can settle this in my mind, and so I don't have to worry or think about it anymore.
The two hurried back and were soon yanking and pulling the body of the big man, with a fair amount of fat around his belly, into this lighted section of the cave. Once there, they both dropped him and sat down heavily exhausted from the effort to get the short distance. A minute passed as they recovered, and then slowly got up so that they could look at the face of the man. "Shit," Charles said.
"This is what I was afraid of."
"If this is the same guy we saw the last time, I wonder, did he fall down here while pulling that little stunt on us?"
"Well, it's a possibility, but, the shirt?"
"We saw it in town, and yet he's here. So what happened?"
"I don't want to know, Charles. I want to get out of here, and now. No one is going to listen to us about what's happened and why, or will they believe us? It's best to just forget all about this and run into the ocean since no one is going to look for us there."
"Leave this guy here?"
"We walk up those stairs and into town with this guy, and you think no one is going to notice us?"
Nate growled. "It is rather late, and fewer people should be around."
"Except for the police, the guards, and maybe the secret police, who are going to be looking for everything and anything."
Charles paced about the place, making a wide circle around Nate and that body. He was staring towards the floor, taking it in as he walked.
"What are you thinking, Charles?" "There is one place that they wouldn't think to look." "Oh, and that is?"
"That hotel room that was reserved for us." Shaking his head no, Nate took a step away towards the stairs.
"Let's leave him and worry about ourselves."
"Kind of hard to when we're already wrapped up in this guy's life."
"Death, you mean. You mean death. He's not alive."
"Well, we didn't kill him, so no, I don't mean his death." Nate looked to his friend, trying to figure out what was going on in his mind. He couldn't put it together and doubted there was much he might be able to glean just from the look of the happy-go-lucky friend.
"I need to understand why you want to take him with us."
"It feels like we're being set up, right? Or at least that's the way it appears.
Everyone expects us to run away from this, and thus taking the blame. But if we can get him off the island, maybe, I don't know, this is a long shot, maybe we can get somebody to listen to us. That would be an incredible long shot, Nate thought. That isn't going to work. Why not?
Charles asked.
If anyone sees this guy, they're going to recognize him and turn around and tell the cops, or anybody, or any authority figures.
That is, Nate, if they liked this dear person in the first place. We still really don't know who he is, other than important. Maybe they'll look the other way when they realize he's nobody.
That is so terribly unlikely, and so many maybes to risk our lives on.
How about we go up the stairs, see what's around there, and if no one else is around, then we decide what to do then, Charles offered hopefully.
And so what you're really saying is you want to get out in some fresh air and don't want to be dampened by this cave anymore? I do feel like I'm being turned into a prude.
They hurried up and out. The fresh, cold air was nice, so it soon had the two shivering. They were on the edge of a woods, and the small little vacation town that they knew of stood before them. Also not far away was that hotel that they reportedly had a room reserved for them. The two shared a look and looked further around just to get the feeling for where things were. They were nowhere close to where they'd been, and where they'd last seen the body of the dear leader from the events of yesterday, or this morning, or whatever it was, if he had been a body at that point in the first place.
Is this a coincidence, or something more sinister feels like it's going on?
Way too much going on for it not to be both, Nate.
Hadn't thought of that. Still think we should do something with that dude?
They expect us to, and expect us not to. So, I don't know, but at the very least, if we do, we get a lot to talk about in jail? Charles said in response with a shake of his head.
Your mind went to what fun it would be to mess with people?
Nate said, shocked.
Yours didn't? Not really, no. What is the plan? Should we get him down there unnoticed? Like, we can't mess with people by confessing to things we don't really know about, and we can't really do anything.
We get him to the hotel room, dump him in the bath, and then maybe we get to sleep for the night?
You think that's all that's going to happen? How would we even get him past the front desk? And why do you want to sleep with a dead body in a hotel room that you're staying in?
We don't use the front desk. We get him through the back stairs or elevator once one of us has checked him in or something. And I don't want to, but it's better than leaving him here, right?
Oh, no. I can't wait to see what goes wrong with this. Let's just go get him.
The two hurried back into the cave to fetch this body. With a hurried pace as best that they could, they dragged the limp body of the leader from the woods on down to the sidewalk. Surprisingly, the body hadn't gone cold or stiff yet, but neither put much thought into that as they moved as quickly as they could to get to an alleyway near the hotel. It didn't really have one of those. It was more of a driveway that went around back to drop off goods, but it was a similar enough thing. Charles had paused near the entrance to this little roadway, adjusting the weight as he was carrying him.
Where is everyone?
Went to bed and didn't want to deal with the cops. Come on, let's get him around towards the back.
Then what?
One of us goes in and asks if we can still have that reservation. If they say yes, we find the back stairs or elevators and get this dead weight up to the room.
Am I going in or are you?
Does it matter? But the only thing I will say is that it shouldn't be both of us.
Why not?
Someone has to watch over the slug. He went missing once before, and well, I don't want to say he can't do it again, but maybe he can. Plus it just feels safer in case something happens, like the police find us. There's a small nook on the side of the hotel in this alleyway, decided the dumpsters around back, and the two stuffed the strangely popular unknown man into that and turned to one another. Shall we play rock, paper, scissors and see who goes? Nate nodded in agreement to this, and they quickly found themselves throwing the same item several times. After about 5 tries, Nate finally threw up his hands in frustration.
I'll fucking go.
It was quiet in comparison to the last time Nate had been in the lobby. No more people crowding in to see if they had a room or anything like that. There were a few people sleeping off in the corner, which made Nate frown as he didn't like to see that kind of thing, and it didn't give him high hopes that the room was still there. Still, he approached the front desk, where a sleepy young woman sat.
Excuse me?
Ah, yes? Her head snapped up, looking at him, though her eyes were still not focused completely. It took another moment before she finally could meet his eye.
Do you have a room reservation for a Nate and a Charles?
She blinked a few times, then looked at her computer. It took a bit of typing, but her face brightened a moment later.
Yes, we do. If you have some ID that would prove that you are one of the men in question? Sure.
He pulled out his wallet and got out his ID, carefully handling it over, though he really didn't trust this situation. It felt like letting go of his ID would just get him into trouble. It felt like this was going to be a moment that the noose of whatever was going on with this weird guy going to be discovered, and everything was going to come down upon him. She took it, looked it over, compiled it, and wrote some stuff down on the computer before handing it back. Another moment passes with more typing, and then she handed over a set of KeyPass card keys.
You're on the 2nd level, room 201. It's a nice suite with plenty of room for you and Mr. Charles. 2 beds. Great, thanks. The emergency stairs and exits, where might they happen to be?
She gave him a puzzled look, but then pointed towards the elevators.
It's always good to know where your exits are, you know? There's so much weird going on lately.
He grabbed the keys, stepped to the side, and wondered what he should do now. If he walked back out the door, that would look weird. But his only other option was to potentially call Charles. Again, this would be a suspicious look for anyone paying attention, and this clerk was certainly paying attention to him now. Instead, he stepped towards the elevators until he was out of line of sight of the front desk, thanks to that being set forward and the elevators being set back against the wall. There was a sign that said stairs and exits, pointing off just to his left, so he hurried that way. Charles had been standing near the nook, trying not to look suspicious for all of the past few minutes. It was getting really cold out, and he only had his t-shirts and pants to keep him warm. And neither was doing a good job of it, so he was bouncing up and down while waiting for Nate to show up again. This little task shouldn't take long, but it was hard to judge these kind of things. A loud clank sounded nearby, and he spun around to see a door opening. Nate emerged to his relief and waved him over. You got the room?
Yeah, the body okay?
They both cast a glance towards the nook. A piece of flabby and extremely white flesh poked out from behind this dumpster nook and trash. He's okay, I think, Charles muttered uncertainly.
Great. I think we have a new problem now.
What is it?
Security cameras.
Shit.
Yeah, what now?
Okay, we make him look like a drunk friend, make sure that his head always is pointed down towards the ground, and no one can really see who he is then, Charles said as he tapped a finger against his lips, thinking out loud.
I don't know if that will work. I mean, we can certainly try, but with our current look, we're bound to run into someone who knows him.
Nate replied, shaking his head and worriedly looking about. Let's just try and get him to the elevator, and then we will worry. The two dragged the body of this strange, weird man over to the elevator once they got into the hotel from that emergency exit, keeping his head down as they waited for it to arrive. Both kept a constant watchful eye out for anyone and even the clerk manning the front desk, although she couldn't see them at the moment. No one popped up to start asking questions to them, so they got into the elevator and rode it up a level. The hallway they exited onto was a typical sort of hotel hallway one would expect. Some vending machines, an ice machine with a little alcove just off the elevator, and a sign pointing with 2 arrows. One to the left, with the odd number rooms, and one to the right, that had even numbers.
"Looks like we're going to the left. Room number 1.
Nate said. With a grunt, they turned that direction and hurried along as quickly as they could. Not exactly an easy task with a body, especially a fat one. They wound up having to go all the way to the end of the carpeted hallway to get to their room, which Nate managed to get open with his card key. They spilled inside, dumping the heavy weight of the body onto the floor, which landed with a bit of a sickening thud. Both winced at how loud that sounded and moved toward picking him up again and getting him further inside and then towards a nearby chair. Dumping him into that, Charles rushed back to close the hotel room door, but looked out the hallway first. No one was poking their head out at that noise and out their door, so that was an okay sign.
"What now?"
Nate asked. "Sleep?"
"I'm not sleeping with a body in the room."
Oh, it was a fairly nice suite of a hotel room with 2 beds, a balcony, a bit of space to walk around in, and a fairly spacious bathroom just off to the side and not far from the door. The original plan was to put him in the tub in the bathroom.
"If we did that, we could never get to use the bathroom without it getting awkward."
"Too tired to fight this. Can we please just put him in there for now? We both get some rest, and haggling about where to put him right now isn't going to help." With a sigh and a grunt, Nate motioned to Charles so that they could both pick up the body of this man and then put him into the bathroom area.
"So now we sleep?"
"There's not much else we can do, plus it'll probably help us think when we wake up." Nate was giving Charles a very odd look and shaking his head. He seemed very uncertain about all of this. The 2 returned to the bedroom area, picking up beds and falling onto them, then passing the fuck out. End of part 2 of One Dead Man. Thank you for listening.